Good afternoon, everybody. Can everybody hear me? Yes? Okay, great. Thank you very much for coming out today for our live panel, Journey to Success. This is a part of our series of Asian Heritage Month events with the Chinese Cultural Center of Greater Toronto. This whole live session is being filmed and will be put onto our Asian Heritage Month website, which is cccgt-ahm.org, or you can just go to the Chinese Cultural Center website and you will see a link to the Asian Heritage Month activities. We are funded in part by the Ministry of Education through the province of Ontario. And my name is Justin Poit. I'm going to be the moderator today. And we've got our guests starting on this side. We've got Clyde Pashis and Juanita Nathan and Derek O at the other end. And we're going to be talking about their background, what they do now, and how they got to where they are today. Because I know that all of you, many of you are finishing this year, and you're probably wondering not only what you want to do with your life, but where you're going to go next year and where you're going to apply for college. So first of all, I want to just go through and start with you, Clyde. Can you tell me a bit about yourself and what it is you do?
Well, my name is Clyde Pashis.
Yeah,
I own multiple businesses. I call myself an entrepreneur, seasoned entrepreneur. I started in the restaurant industry 15 years ago. I brought in the second chain of the Philippines called Max's Restaurant. I don't know if you guys are familiar. Our first location is at Dufferin and Steeles. That's our flagship. For those of you guys that haven't tried Filipino cuisine, we're a little bit of mix of everything. We have noodles, we have, most of it are deep fried, very unhealthy. But for most Asian culture, we love to eat a lot of rice. So again, from the Philippines, we're colonized by a lot of colonies, Spain, Chinese, Japanese. So our food is very diverse in terms of not just traditional tastes, but more forms of everything. And again, moving forward to some of my businesses from then to now, I own a textile industry, which is here currently in Markham, and I love sports. So I do have a few multi-sports in the city. One of my flagship locations is here in Markham as well, Victoria Park and Steeles. It's called Battle Arena. And I know predominantly our audiences are the youth. In sports, predominantly basketball, volleyball, and pickleball. And I can share my story and how I became successful into that avenue. But from what I do, this is by far for me the most important thing that I've built in terms of my history. And at the same time, I've learned that in sports industry, throughout the course of an event or even owning a location, it's a great way to network and to know a lot of people, especially in Toronto.
Great, thank you very much. Juanita, can you tell us a bit about yourself and what you're doing right now? Tell everybody what you're doing and how you got there.
Definitely. So my name is Juanita Nathan. I'm currently a city councillor with the city of Markham. And I'm also a youth outreach worker. So I'm a community worker in Scarborough. I got here through many avenues, but my passion has always been with the community. So I've been working for the community for over 25 years now. And advocating for youth has always been my passion. So as a youth outreach worker working in Scarborough for over 15 years, I love connecting youth to services, working with people, and also advocating for them at times. But most of all, teaching them to advocate for themselves has been my calling, I think. That's what I've been doing, like leadership trainings. I work a lot in the TDSP schools right now. I work for an agency called Youth Link. It's a youth mental health agency, been around for 115 years in Scarborough, in Toronto, but in Scarborough as well. And we own one of the youth shelters that's in the east, one of the only youth shelters. And politics, I feel, has paved the path for me to see how I could work in the policy level, but also working in front lines has shown how it trickles down and actually can see the changes that I have made in the policy level in front lines. So I love my job. I've been a school trustee for 12 years. I've been the chair of the York Region District School Board as well. So it's been a rewarding career choices for me.
So, as a counselor, how much, if you had to talk about percentages, how much of your time does that take up?
The City of Markham is part-time work. So it's kind of 2 days a week. We are in meetings. And my job with YouthLink is pretty flexible. So I work sometimes on the weekends as well. But most of my work with youth is after school and in the evening. So I'm able to manage it. And one of the reasons I strive to do that is because it has always been my passion to work with youth.
Right. And Derek, same thing. You know, what is your what do you do? What's your passion? How did you get there?
Sounds good. Hi everyone, name's Derek O. You know what, I've had a variety of experiences. I can say after I finished school, probably spent about almost 25 years in various industries, from the banks, advertising, as well as in healthcare. The majority of that time was spent in the healthcare industry, where I grew a passion for, you know, working in businesses or companies that help other people in the end, right? In the end, everyone needs healthcare. It's a great bubble to work in. I'm also like a sports or a very active person. You could say I love basketball, so I got to learn more about Battle Canada later on at some point. But in 2018, I started my own business as well. I have a co-founder. The two of us started it, also focused in healthcare. It is a grind at first to do your own business after leaving the corporate world, but I can definitely say that the experiences I gained in sales, management, working my way up the career chain in the corporate world has benefited to allow us to build a successful business that's continuing to grow. I'm happy to share more about that as we talk today.
So you feel definitely that being employed in the corporate world has helped you as an entrepreneur?
I would definitely say that it has grounded my expectations and how we plan and strategically grow a business. The experience is definitely invaluable that I gained in the corporate world. It's not saying that you have to work in a corporate job, but to understand how large Fortune 500 companies and businesses manage their cash, manage their expectations and their employees, will set the ground for a pretty stable business if you do it on your own as well.
So you said that it grounded your expectations. You know, I'm sure we all talk to a lot of entrepreneurs, those that have never done it and have sort of, you know, pie in the sky ideas of it. How do you feel that your when you were much younger, your perception of owning a business versus reality? Can you define the difference?
You know, growing up, I was always surrounded by entrepreneurs, and when you're looking from outside in, everything looks rosy. You know, I'm sure everyone sees businesses advertising to them, and everyone looks like they're successful. But on the outside, everything always looks good, right? So I would definitely say, like, growing up, seeing that, you know, the expectation is, hey, I can just do my own business. Anyone can do their own business, and anybody can. But to do it successfully, I think it takes a different mindset. Going in the corporate world, you could be asked to launch a new service or launch a new business or a new brand or a product. But behind you is a billion-dollar company that has money there to continuously fund the mistakes, the losses, to keep it going long enough so that you can turn your business into a success. But in reality, if you're doing it from the money you have in the bank, how long do you have, right? And that's kind of where the big difference is, right? Taking someone from a corporate world and hiring them, for example, into our business, we would need to make sure that person has that understanding that they don't have an unlimited budget to do whatever it takes. And we have to be very strategic and careful in how we go about growing a business.
Yeah, no, that's great. So Derek, who was your biggest mentor, or has been your biggest mentor, you know, as you've been on this journey?
For this business, myself, we definitely, I can't say there was one big mentor, but we had a few people that we always relied on. And that's what I would encourage anyone to do, is to reach out to various individuals that have different perspectives. We had people that had started a business from scratch, exited in healthcare in different industries, and they were able to guide us a bit as well. My father, who's also a senator in Canada, he provided a lot of guidance in terms of different individuals I could speak to, and he always set a good example in terms of the importance of networking and getting to know other individuals just to gain insight and experience from others. But I'll also give a big shout out to my co-founder. The two of us make a great team, and we learn and utilize each other's networks, and that has been a great sounding board for us to have each other as we do the business.
Great. And the same question to you, Anita. Who were some of your mentors as you were coming up through education and also in your work?
I think there are a lot of trailblazers in my own community who have done these community outreach work before, and also in politics. And also being a female and being a Tamil female from Sri Lanka, a war-torn country, we have certain expectations in our community, what we need to give back to the community. And one of the expectations is advocacy for the community. We do live in a multicultural community, and a lot of people come from similar experiences who migrate to Canada. And I see this as my kind of calling to do this work for them. So my mentor would be my community, I would say. So not one particular person, but as a collective and the experiences that come from us.
Politics is, it can be a rocky road. How is that perceived in your community and by your family? Is that something they encouraged, or did they say, you know what, maybe don't go that route, you can help in other ways?
So you're absolutely correct. In the Asian culture and in community in general, politics is not perceived as a female occupation. So I'll be the very first female elected in the Tamil community. And I think you have to have certain mentality to kind of deal with all the barriers that come along with that. Being a female, being a multicultural female, all those intersections that you're crossing out. And you're right, it's sometimes I get that a lot from some of the older females in the community saying that, are you sure this is what you want? Are you sure you're going to be able to manage your family? There's a lot of expectations as a female when you're in a profession. It could be any profession, but there are certain expectations at home that go along with that. So it is tough to some extent, but if you have the right mindset and the perseverance and the passion to go along with that, I'm sure that you could succeed in that.
Did it get easier once you had proven that you could actually win elections and succeed? Did it get easier?
There are some battles I'm still fighting, I would say, after 13 years of being in politics. It is a slow process, but definitely when I do talk with girls, when I do go out to groups and mentor girls and talk to them, one of the things that I particularly talk to them about is that, the self-confidence they need to overcome those fears that are intrinsically built into us being from certain continent in the planet.
So Clyde, who are some of the people that you looked up to, maybe even when you were their age and as you went through to all the way to now?
Yes, one of them is my mother, my own mother.
No, go ahead, Anita. Yeah, no, I want to hear that actually.
Yes, so one of the person particularly is my mother, just because of her resilience. We've come, she was more than 40 years when we came here because I was just a teenager. And so they had to uproot their entire lives and move here and start new. And that can be hard at that age. That could be very hard at that age. And I didn't realize that when I was young at their age. And now I see that if I had to do that at this age, it would be really scary and tough. So I really thank her for that and look up to her for courage.
But she supported you.
Definitely,
She
yes.
did, and that's well, I wouldn't say unusual, but when you think of the immigrant family, especially if they've battled, a lot of battles to become successful here, they want the best for their kids. And when kids suggest that they're going to become a rock star or an artist or something like that, it scares parents a lot. They'd rather they go to med school or somewhere where they know there's a decent job, a secure job after. Thank you very much, Juanita. So Clyde, I'd love to hear about your mentors, who you looked up to when you were sort of school age all the way through to now.
It was different for me growing up here in Canada. When I came, I was already 13 years old from the Philippines. So my mentor was a little bit different. It was the Asian culture, my grandparents, my parents obviously, the cousins of cousins. So back home is always about inheritance. And you're fed a lot. You've given a lot. But you also have to do your work in terms of going to school. But everything is prepared. And once you move to Canada, the perspective is different. So when you mentioned to me my upbringing and how I became who I am today, is I actually grew up in Scarborough and I graduated here at Centennial. So I went back in the day, it was so different than what it is now. So in my expertise and in my background, when people ask me, "You do basketball for a living?" I said, "Yes, I do basketball for a living." Because when I was younger, I went to public school and never had any mentors. My mentors was my friends off the street when we were playing basketball on the playground. So back in the day, there was no access. Back in the day, the access was go out there, have friends, get some mentors, and do the street life. And meet people, meet your community. Community is it's a huge involvement to every one of us, right? And again, working with diversities and being a part of that community is sometimes it's different. And now, fast forwarding now to what I do it's all about community. And you look at it in a way where, yes, we have basketball courts, yes, we have pickleball courts, yes, we have physiotherapy, yes, we have chiropractor. It's everyone's for mentally and for physical involvement. But there's a business aspect to it. And there's sometimes, businesses fails. It's because sometimes it's the smallest things. If there's no vision and it's mismanaged, right? So you got to surround yourself with people that has always been experienced, that has been in the game for quite some time. And not only that, when you surround yourself with that, educate yourself as well, right? Is this what you want, right? And if this is what you want, right, go for it, right? Grab that opportunity. So, long story short, when I was younger, I met so much, that paved the way for me. And I stick to that vision, and I'm a firm believer that there is a need for all these multi-sport facilities, not just in Toronto, but in general itself, right? You have flashback, talk about you loving basketball, right? The Raptors won in 2019. That was our first championship in the city. Guess what? Trickle effect afterward. You'll see so much gyms that opened up, right? So much private owners that are investing to sports complex, right? So that means to say there's a need. There's a need of this. And as our community grows, and as I see you guys here, I was in your shoes before. I was in the same similar situation before when I want to be a part of that society. I want to be a part of that community. Sports bridge that. Not just education, but sports itself, right? So when people ask me all the time, does it take talent for you? Does it take skill for you? Right? You ask yourself, right? What if you have both? Sky's the limit. You can do whatever it takes.
So when you say community, are you talking about the sports community or the Filipino community? What are you talking about when you say
In
community?
general.
In general. Okay.
In general. When I say sports community, you look at it talent-wise. I'm going to set an example as FIBA, right? As agents, we start to compete recently. You've got the growth, you've got the height, right? There's a difference between playing the NBA and playing in FIBA, right? There's a difference between a star player getting multi-millions, you get paid. But in FIBA, you're all about your country, right? You play for your country. And when you play for your country, you play with your teammates. That's the difference. That's the difference between making money, earning money, and there's a difference between playing for gold and winning. And winning is all about everybody. It's all about your community. Now, to answer your question about, in general, I think it's not just all about basketball. It's all about different sports in the world and how we can unite each other, how we can diversify ourselves in the community, and to have that aspect. Not only having that aspect of being in sports, but it's run it as a business. If you look at it this way, I see future physiotherapists, I see future chiropractors, I see future athletes. You just need to have that access. You just need to have that guidance. You just need to have that mentorship. Right? And there's a lot nowadays. I consider myself...
In terms of mentors, you mean?
And mentorships. Yeah, and mentors. Back in it, nowadays, there's a lot of mentors now more than ever. Right? You just don't go to the park. You see a lot of private gyms. You see a lot of YMCAs, right? They have all of these access for you. Utilize those access. That's why the government is here for you. That's why the government is here. To ensure the stability of the growth of the next generations is in safe hands.
Right. Derek, talk to me about your education and what you needed to know and do to prepare yourself to get to where you are. Because you say you've done a varied number of jobs. What was that path? What did it look like?
It's a great question. Honestly, I was talking to a few guys here earlier that are in grade 12. I'll be honest, when I went to university, I didn't know what I wanted to do. I didn't. I think many kids are like that as well, right? Not everyone knows what they want to do, and I don't think everyone always ends up doing what they study at the same time. So I studied economics. I don't know much more about economics now, because I didn't go into economics after. But it was a great experience living on my own. That's when I first moved away from home, went away to school. I went to Brock University in St. Catharines. I lived there for about 4 years, did my economics, ended up working at a fraud strategy center with CIBC, so CIBC, one of our banks here, and I spent about 3 years there building up strategies to reduce credit card fraud for the bank. So it wasn't revenue generating, but it was saving the bank money from losses. And it was interesting. I learned a lot. I learned a lot of analytical things, how to use Excel, how to do business presentations. But then my colleagues even asked me at some point, they're like, why are you doing this? And I'm like, I don't know why. And they're like, you should be in sales or something. Because it didn't fit my personality. I was the talkative guy, behind a closed door with a bunch of analysts. And so I took that as a sign, and I was like, you know what? Before I settle down and move on in life and buy a house, or this was in 2004, I decided to pick up and leave, and I just went off on my own. I moved to Shanghai, lived in China for about 4 years, and there I worked in advertising. Got a little taste of what Justin does, and I learned that advertising was a very, I consider it, and there's no offense, is a thankless job. We love what we do in advertising, but it never ends. You are always at your client's whim, and once one job's done, the next one is already waiting. So it's tough work, and I learned to grind it out. I learned that to be in this industry, you have to work hard, and there's no way around it. So I had a ton of respect for the advertising agency after that, and even to this day, when we hire people in, we have a few people that have an agency background, and automatically I know that, hey, if you spent more than a few years in an agency, you know what hard work is. And so that led me into working in healthcare. So when we talk about career path, I went into healthcare. I worked in the pharmaceutical industry for about 5 years, and then moved into the medical device industry. The med device was pretty cool. It was all working with I think it's good to share with you guys because there's a variety of these experiences, but the medical device world was very interesting. I got to sell a lot of instrumentation into surgical centers, like Trillium, which is by the Bronte College. You guys are right by the hospital there. So I used to spend a lot of time in the operating rooms, selling devices into cardiac surgeons, urology, like any kind of specialty you can think of, we would have devices for them. A lot of experience there, moved into marketing, moved into senior management, and that's when I was like, okay, I've always wanted to do my own thing, and if I don't do it now, when's a good time? But all those experiences have led me to be able to confidently go into a new space in my healthcare business and understand how I could tackle the problems of getting a business started and then running it effectively and efficiently after. So that's
the products you developed at your company, were they born from looking at what's out there and saying, I've got a better way to do this, or is that where they came from?
So that 100%. So the first product we worked with when we launched focused on specific disease states. So it was urinary tract infections. Very common thing, UTI. Do you guys all know what a UTI is? Anyone ever heard of a UTI? No? Maybe. Don't put your hand up. It's okay. There's nothing wrong with it. It's not a disease. Anyway, so a UTI is like when you have an infection of your bladder, right? Hurts when you pee. So we all knew that working with urologists, so again, looking at my corporate experience, without that experience working in the healthcare industry, I would not have had these relationships and the network I had to be able to bounce and get feedback from specialists in the community. So we developed a product that they could use instead of antibiotics. So right now, with a UTI, the only solution is an antibiotic. That's it. For treatment, for prevention. So if we could clinically prove, and all we do are natural products, so it's a little different. So if we could clinically prove to a urologist to say, hey, recommend this natural product instead of an antibiotic, and we could win them over, and that's where we vetted the idea to validate it. We made sure some of the key urologists would support us, and that's when we brought it to market and tried to slowly, one by one, spread the word and let it grow. So we had to do our market research first, though.
That's great. Good story. Juanita, so a big constant thing that I hear, especially during Asian Heritage Month, is that certain populations within the Asian culture are not very involved in civic involvement, whether it's joining government boards, going for elected office and whatnot. Now, being Chinese Canadian, we've noticed that actually, the South Asian communities are very, way more organized than we are, and have much better proportionate representation, in the House of Commons and whatnot. What advice could you give? This is a big question, sorry, but you may not even have the answer. What's the best advice you could give for, people in the Asian community, regardless of, which specific country they're from, to get involved and be more involved with local government, and even, running for school board or things like that?
You're right, it's a very big question, and different communities have different biases based on where they come from and the experiences they have faced. One of the things that I talk about with the community members is for them to get involved. Even the air we breathe, there's politics involved in that. So it doesn't make sense for us to sit back and make others make the decision for us. One of the things that I see from young families now who are immigrants but who come here very early in their life and they've gone through the school system here, on the election day they would take kids out of school and take the kids with them to vote, just so that they could teach them from an early on age that how important it is to vote. Even though the kids cannot vote, they're actually watching their parents actually participate in this exercise. So those are very important. I think the family values need to give room for that. where you need to talk about things like this at your dinner table, things that affect you day to day. And even one of the things that we're trying to teach youth even now is that 40 hours of community service in high school, just so that you could give back to the community. In that process, you're also learning what you like about your job or what you want to do in the future. A lot of the students volunteer in the healthcare system. Some of them want to become doctors and don't know what entails being a doctor, a nurse, or anything to do with healthcare. Some of them may not like seeing blood or being around patients all the time, and this is a good way for them to learn. So there are some things that are built in the school level for young people like youth to learn about community involvement, but it's more than that. It has to come from your own family values. So parents need to take the time to teach them and educate them about giving back to the community.
Thank you, Juanita. Clyde, is there somebody or multiple people in your life right now that you grew up looking up to that you hope to please when you succeed right now? Is there anybody that you are hoping will be pleased with your performance?
Well,
Or you don't care?
family is important, right? I have two kids, right? And you may be a role model for them. They're younger than our average kids here. But at the same time, I was hoping to create a legacy for the community.
Create a, sorry?
A legacy for the community.
Mhm.
For the most part, when I took this role of creating events for the city 5 years ago, I've given the opportunity by the Philippine Independent State Council to put up the first basketball court in Nathan Phillips Square. It's never been done before. We had about 25,000 people that came, and it was a great avenue for tourists. It was a great avenue for kids to participate. Basketball, breakdancing. We even had face painting. We had food trucks. It was a great event, right? All of these are charity work. Was that when I first started, as you start your own business or you have to start something, you have to sacrifice. You have to sacrifice your own sweat equity, right? And it's tough. And again, you gotta have the right vision, you gotta have the right mindset. At the same time, criticism. You face a lot of criticism, especially with family, that says, hey, if you're doing this, is it, feasible in the long term? So again, for me, it's all about bringing the community together and, knowing that there is a desire to have, not just in Toronto, and I speak to, and last week I was in Windsor, we are actually having another event similar to this in Windsor that's powered by the mayor. So as you grow this type of events, you see a lot of advocates, not just in Toronto, but different types of cities. Right? And when you meet certain people that has a similar vision as you, you push for it. Right? It's endless. And I think for me to leave that legacy to the next generation and hoping to see that next generation, young athletes, right here, like, whether if it's in, you stay in Toronto, whether if it's you make it from the NBA or you go back home. For predominantly the Filipino community, we love basketball so much that the perspective now is, oh, we don't want to go to the NBA, but we want to go back home. But 20 years ago, everybody wanted to go to the NBA or wanted to be in Canada. So the mindset is now so different. It's not about just getting paid, but I want to give back to my talent, to my roots, where my roots is at. So there's something to prove.
That's great. That's fantastic. How many people in the audience think that money is the ultimate measurement of entrepreneurial success? Oh, I thought many more people would have put up their hand. Either or you're just not, you're just shy. Money is a good indicator of business, but many entrepreneurs start business for other reasons. And I'll start with you, Derek. I mean, what is your measurement for success in your business?
So, honestly, in healthcare in general, we measure a number of metrics as a business. I mean, money, revenue is always one of them. But a big number we look at is also the number of patients that we touch, right? So, how many doctors are we working with across Canada and across the U.S.? How many patients are taking a product and are actually seeing success? So we look at things like this because if someone is taking one of our products and they're staying on it for the long term, that means that they are likely seeing benefit from it. Otherwise, why would they be taking it? And these are things that we look at and we really put on the forefront of our business because in the end, the reason we're in healthcare is to help people, right? And if we can provide better solutions than what's out there, there's always a market for that, and there's always people that are looking for options for alternative healthcare methods to solve the problems that they might be having. So I definitely say putting the patient first is the most important thing we look at.
Juanita, same for you. What do you consider success in what you do?
Well, as a youth worker, my success would be if I could change the path of one student. Like in the entire year, I could be working with hundreds of kids, but if one person, I could convince them to go back to school or leave a gang and go follow a different path, that would be success for me. The joy that you get from that is so immense. It's immeasurable. I always tell people I love working with the community so much that even if I don't get paid, this is probably what I would do regardless. Hence, in politics as well, like you get to make those decisions, fix things, or able to create paths for that. So my success in my line of work would be to get through to somebody, to see if they could make a different choice in their life. And that's what I kind of feel.
Great, thank you. So one of the biggest misconceptions, and I hear this all the time from people who say, I want to start my own business because I can make my own hours and I can relax when I want to, which clearly is not reality. So I want to talk to the two entrepreneurs here. We'll start with you, Clyde. Let everybody know how hard you work and how many hours you got to put in a week.
When I first started the restaurant, it was 24 hours. It was like having a baby. And there was no vacations. We started with 16 employees. And I was the manager, I was the cashier, I was the accountant. And pretty much everything in the front of the house. And hired someone at the back of the house and just had to multitask. Truth of the matter is, the restaurant industry, it's all about service. When you have a good product, you have to stick to that product. You have to stick to the same service every single day, right? And you got to maintain that. To answer your question, being in the restaurant industry, it's like having a newborn infant that when it cries, you have to attend to it, right? Yes, the monetary is great, the money flows, but at the end of the day, you gotta make sure that you have time for yourself, you have time for your family, right? And you gotta stick to the schedules. You gotta make sure that you're informative, make sure that you make decisions. The best decisions, not just only for your restaurant, but best decisions for your managers. Making sure that health and safety is also a consideration, right? Making sure that you have the right steps for your chefs. Making sure that the cleanliness of the restaurant is always your top priority. So in short, there's a lot of ways to learn when you're hands-on, but to also a certain extent. You got to make sure that you have to also not micromanage, but you also have to trust your managers. You got to trust the system. And once that trust is involved, then you think about, should I grow my restaurant, right? And How can I maintain that growth, right? And do I need help for that growth? Absolutely yes. That's why we have professional people that can help you build your business, right? You gotta imagine and you gotta remember, your brand is yourself. It's not the restaurant. It's not the signage up there, right? People, when they look and they walk into that restaurant, they look at you. They look at the owners, they look at the managers, they look at the chefs, and how you build that.
Great, thank you.
Well,
Derek, why don't you tell us what your typical week looks like from a work hours perspective?
That's a great question, and I echo and share the same sentiment of what a lot of what Clyde was saying. It's a lot of work, right? No one will ever sell or do the work of your business like you do it. You're the owner. If you don't do it, no one else is going to do it. You know, we've grown the team, like the business has grown, so I don't have to be as involved from the day-to-day selling and the management of the business, but I'm there all the time. I'm available all the time as well. Just as an example, this past, like last week, Monday to Thursday, full day of work, meetings all the time, networking. In the evenings, I'm catching up on stuff I can't do. I got 2 kids as well, so I'm like, I'm going from 4:30 every day in the morning. Even today, I was up at 4:30. Thursday afternoon, I was in San Francisco for a conference until the end of day Sunday, and then on a red-eye flight back, so I could spend Monday, which was our long weekend with the kids. So it is nonstop. In the end, you're the driver. As I was saying earlier, business looks nice from the outside. Everything looks good. But in the background, it's a whole other story in terms of how much work and effort you have to put in around the clock.
Thank you. So Asian Heritage Month is all about promotion of culture and for different Asian communities to get to know each other, like what we're doing right now. Tell me, Juanita, how has being of Tamil descent, how much of a role does that play in what you do and what you've chosen to do?
A lot, I would say, because your values come from who you are and what you're being taught, and that's what you're bringing into whatever the work that you're doing. So it's all about what you've been taught since the beginning. So I've always been taught about hard work and family and community, and so I'm making a living based on that. I think sometimes it's very hard because the lines get blurred when you're working for the community, and you don't know if you're working or you're relaxing. Even on the weekends, you're at events, and sometimes you take work home because you're still trying to solve a problem. It's occupying your mind. But at the end of the day, if you could live with that, and if it makes you happy, what you're doing, and if it doesn't feel like it's a lot of work, it's a win-win for everybody, I think. And that's what I kind of experience. So trying to treat my job in a way that I'm enjoying it and I'm having fun with it. And at the same time, you're actually, like my job, I think is a little bit different, that you're doing your 9 to 5 sometimes. Then you have the selected positions, your position, you're working 365 days. There's no vacation or anything like that. People still expect you to pick up the phone when they call you because you're their representative. And you have to somehow find a fine balance in there to carve out some time for yourself and enjoy what you're doing. I've done it for so long, it becomes a second nature to me now. But I do see sometimes how stressful it is and how I can't turn my brain off when I go home and I'm still working things in my head to see how I could manage this tomorrow or the next week or whatnot. So it's really about who you are and what you enjoy doing, and your values that you've been taught since you're young.
Thank you. Clyde, you said you came here when you were 13, right?
Yes.
You were 13. So just in everything you've been explaining, you've mentioned the Filipino community a number of times. It's kind of a two-part question. The first one is how, the same question I posed to Juanita, how important is the community to you and what you do every day? And also, do you see yourself as a Canadian Filipino or a Filipino who is in Canada?
Great question. So the first question is how important is the Filipino community? A Filipino community before, I believe we're now the third largest community in Greater Toronto area. The perception of every Filipinos in the Philippines was, the mindset was, I would love to go and migrate to Canada or the US so that I could give a better life to my kids and to my family. So predominantly, some of our family members back in the Philippines, every wives would leave for a nursing position, right, or for the hospitality. So that's it. You'll see some of the nurses, whether if it's PSW, there are a lot of Filipinos, right? When I came in here, my family had a business back in the Philippines. So my dad was already on my ear and says, business never stops, even though you're sleeping. So when we go back to Canada, I want you to have a similar mindset in Canada. Whether if it's whatever business that you're going to portray and you're going to partake, it has to have the same mindset. So when we landed here in Toronto, my goal is to make sure and to perhaps educate, just a little bit of experience to my community that having a business is not so bad after all, if you're passionate about it, right? There's not as much Filipinos that are in the business or in the trades or in the industry because we are, we're talented, but we just need to have that push. We need to have that edge to ourselves and the comfort level, the comfort zone. And I think, with that being said, leading towards the question and a half, are you a Filipino Canadian or a Canadian Filipino? I prefer to myself as a Canadian, but also, being a Filipino, also that Asian heritage in me, to say, look, I think, the modern world of being Canadian, that we have so much resources now more than ever, could bring more attention, could provide more opportunities to the next generations to come. So again, a little bit of fuse between both worlds, and for me, it's very important to look back to all of our traditions, right? And to this day, my parents would always say to me, no matter what you make, whether if it's $1 or $1 million, I want you to understand and to know that you have the right to earn every penny on ground level.
You have the right to what, sorry?
To earn that penny on the ground level, right? And make sure that you stick to that vision, stick to that opportunities.
That's great, thank you. So Derek, how conscious are you, if you are, of being a Chinese Canadian in your daily operations?
Again, great question. I came here when I was 1, so pretty much born here. So pretty westernized. Pretty sure most of you can tell. But you know what? Hey, I've always been proud of the fact that I'm Chinese Canadian. Grew up going to a lot of Chinese cultural events. My father obviously was very involved in various Chinese business associations, so I grew up going to all these events ever since I was young. When it comes to business operations, we're very multinational. What I would say is growing up and working in the corporate world, I saw how various ethnicities naturally fell into various roles in companies. And I think that just was a tendency towards cultural habits or how we were raised in certain ways. As an example, the accounting department was always Chinese or Indian, right? Typically. And then salespeople were usually Caucasian, right? And so I saw a lot of this as I was growing up and working in the different in these different organizations. But as time went by, you can see the blend. Like we have to cater to our demographic of our society. And in Toronto, across Canada, it's very multicultural. So in our business, what I can say is that we do make an effort to have a very multinational organization. So our team is made up of it's very diverse. We probably have every country in the world represented within our organization. And that's what we pride ourselves on a lot, is diversity and inclusivity. So a heavy female presence as well as a heavy multicultural presence as well.
Having a father in the position that he's in, did that apply any external pressures on you?
I would say it did not, because my parents were very hands-off in the sense of, you know, they never governed what or how I would do anything, including marriage, right? Like, my wife is Chinese as well, but it was never told that I should marry a Chinese lady. They would have no preference at all, I think, with any cultural that I raised in the end. But yeah, no, so I would say there was no influence on that. It was more me growing up in Toronto, as well as having that, you know, just the experiences that I've had that made me, I'd say, much more of a open to multiculturalism.
Juanita, the Markham City Council is quite diverse. What do you attribute that to? Because if you look at, for example, Toronto City Council, it's quite different. What do you attribute that to?
Well, I have always felt like I am representing a wide array of Asian communities when I'm in these positions, especially when I was in the trustee position. I was the only South Asian. So just because I'm brown, now I'm representing all shades of brown and black. That's a lot of weight on your shoulders, because now you're not responsible for what you're there to do, but now you have to speak for all these communities as well. I experienced the same in the council as well. I'm the only brown person there for Markham, Richmond Hill, Vaughan, many cities around that come under York region. It's a different kind of expectation when you're in that position. And on top of that, my own community, we have a lot of issues. Like we come from a war-torn country, a community that's experienced genocide together. So that weight is on top of that. Now you have to speak sometimes for different diverse groups, which I don't mind at all, but you just have to be that much versatile in cultures and issues and things that are, so it's not a Canadian issue that we're dealing with here. It is true, people come here looking for new beginnings, new life. People expected, I think, to leave their baggages and come, but it never happens like that, because this is your life. This is what you know. You, no matter how much you live in this, like I came here when I was 16, I always would think myself as a common Canadian, because the language we speak at home, the traditions we follow, culture could be different. It's pretty flowing. It could change, but your traditions and your heritage doesn't change. Your festivals, the celebrations that you do will always remind you of who you are and where you came from. So in that sense, it's very beautiful and poetic how you could try and fit into a community like this, but you would always circle back to like your core values as who you are, I think. And sitting in the council, I feel that sometimes, because I'm always chosen for an equity group or equity and diversity group and multicultural events and things like that. And it is a bit of a pressure at times, I would say.
So if there's one piece of advice you could give to our group here, what would that be?
I would always tell them to follow their passion. So dream big, but always follow your passion, because you could never go wrong with that.
Great, thank you. Clyde, same question to you. What's one piece of advice you'd give?
Follow your vision. Follow your vision every day, right? Again, follow your passion. Make sure that you stick to that, right? Good, bad, ugly, stick to your vision.
Derek?
I'll add to that and say, with that vision, work hard, never give up, and I always live by no just means yes later.
That's very good. Are there any questions from the audience? Okay, I know that there's one bus that has to leave, so yeah, by all means, we don't want you to miss your bus. Are there any students that have questions? Oh, we have one right here. Yes. Can you stand up and speak as loud as you can?
So first of all, I want to say like your story is very inspiring, and like all of you are very successful, and you also have the community like in terms of healthcare and like connecting the youth, and also like food industry, sport industry. So I want to know like because having a business you need to take a lot of risks. So I want to know like what motivates you to step out of your comfort zone and then take a risk, and also like the health.
Who would you like to ask that question to?
I want to ask like no.
Oh, okay. All right. Well, yeah. Why don't we start with you, Clyde? So, what keeps you going, and how do you get yourself out of your comfort zone to do new things?
I'll be honest with you, just so what Derek said, business is not all about, painting a perfect picture, right? You have to look into your, and expect failures before you succeed, right? There's going to be so much failures that you have to expect before you really start succeeding, right? You don't look at your bank accounts every single day. Maintain your bank account, though. Yeah.
That's great. How about you, Derek? What like the things that you have to do to get out of your comfort zone?
I would just say, do something that you love, because if you have a passion for what you're doing, it doesn't matter about the money. You will be driven to go get the results that you want, because it is something you're trying to convey, to sell, to offer, to help people with. That if you put that at the forefront, that'll get you up early in the morning and think about how can I do this differently, how can I do it better.
Juanita, what do you do to get out of your comfort zone?
I would say don't be afraid to fail, because that's really crippling at times to think about that. But just think of them as learning opportunities for you to succeed later on. So they are all trials for you to succeed. So failing is not bad. It gives you the motivation and courage to go forward. So don't be afraid to fail.
Great, thank you very much. Any other questions? We'll take one more. Yes, down there. Can you stand up, please, and just speak as loud as you can? Or you can move up to the front of the room. Yeah, go ahead. Mm-hmm.
So, like, I read in your bio that you had a BA in economics from Brock University. So, I would want to ask, since, like, you're not working in the pharmaceutical field, I would want to ask, like, what is your advice on, like, working in, like, a completely sort of different field from what you initially studied? And, like, how can you say about that?
So everyone take this with a grain of salt, because everyone has their own path. Some people know they want to be a doctor, and they will go through the steps to get and become a doctor, as an example. For me, like I said, I didn't know what I wanted to do, and I looked at my degree as a way to get that higher education, but then get into a good corporate job as well, and to learn from there. So I learned from experience. I wouldn't say my economics degree taught me anything else aside from hard discipline and studying, because you never stop learning. Like even now, I'm still learning. And that's just to touch on that, as an entrepreneur or as anybody who wants to do your own thing, you're always learning. Always be curious, always ask questions, right? Because that's how we all become a better person as well, and we learn how to succeed. So I besides the whole aspect of going to school for university, I wouldn't say that helped me in my current role right now, but my work experiences have definitely paved that path for me to be able to build a business and to do it ourselves.
Great, thank you very much, guys. Big hand for our panel.